Before this video begins, I would like to give a quick thank you to my Asban Team level patrons Fallon Cortez and Nathan Gibson. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It's November and Doctor Who's grand 60th anniversary is right around the corner, promising all sorts of action, drama and tragedy with its exciting trilogy of nostalgic specials reuniting the Doctor and Donna Noble. But to mark such a special occasion, I thought I'd travel back through Doctor Who's past to the very beginning, An Unearthly Child. Long before UNIT, the Sonic Screwdriver, the Celestial Toymaker, Regeneration, and even colour television, there was just a mysterious old man, his granddaughter, and a battered blue police box in a junkyard. Nobody could have ever predicted just how far this little show would ever go, especially with such unassuming origins. So join me on a trip to where it all began. It's time to take a deep dive into Doctor Who's very first story.
Come on, let's get it over with.
The story behind Doctor Who's creation is well known by this point. In the 1950s and early 60s, the BBC mainly aired news, documentaries, live events, Eurovision, and procedural dramas like Dixon of Dock Green and Z Cars. However, one thing it almost never featured was science fiction, the rapidly growing media genre which was exploding in popularity thanks to the rapid advancements of technology and the ongoing space race. The 40s and 50s often referred to as the golden age of science fiction, with magazines and comics exploring other worlds, B-movies seeing giant bug-eyed monsters invading Earth, and television shows like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers featuring handsome, larger-than-life heroes saving the universe and damsels in distress. The BBC had, of course, aired The Quatermass Experiment in 1953, a 6-part sci-fi horror serial about an alien lifeform infiltrating and attempting to evade Earth. This was a very successful and influential programme in the sci-fi genre, but it was one of the few examples of the broadcaster actually airing sci-fi programming. However, this all changed a decade later, when the BBC, in their traditionally timely manner, decided that it might be a good idea to do a bit more of that science fiction thing, specifically exploring things like time travel and telepathy in a more long-term ongoing series. Successful Canadian producer Sidney Newman was brought in as BBC head of drama and championed the sci-fi series idea, eventually coming up with Doctor Who. And the rest, as they say, is history. But what is the actual first serial of Doctor Who like? Well, it may come as a surprise given the show's legacy, but it's really not good, unless you like 90 minutes of caveman politics, in which case it's your dream come true. But to be fair, the first part of the story itself is actually pretty good. First of all, there's that incredible title sequence with that now iconic theme playing. I'll always love how they achieved this effect, pointing two TV cameras at each other to create all these strange visuals. I know it's weird to think nowadays, but this was genuinely something completely new for a lot of viewers at the time. They'd never seen anything like this. Hell, the title sequence itself even reportedly scared a lot of kids when it first aired, which again goes to show how unprecedented something like this was. It was also unique and innovative against all the odds. It's mysterious and chilling, immediately grabbing your attention and getting you interested, so as far as opening titles go, it's absolutely phenomenal and achieves its job perfectly. It could have easily been some generic or plain title card, just a bit of card that said Doctor Who. But the production team did such a fantastic job with it, and it's no surprise the theme music is still considered one of the most iconic and recognisable themes in all British media. Ron Grainer and Delia Derbyshire really nailed the otherworldly feel to set that sci-fi tone right from the get-go. The story opens with a policeman walking past Totter's Lane, and I just wanted to mention that Big Finish actually has a story about him, and it's super messed up. Anyway, the action then shifts to Coal Hill School, an unassuming school in Shoreditch filled with the usual drama and bantering you'd expect. However, as teachers Ian Chesterton and Barbara Wright discuss the child prodigy Susan Foreman, it's clear that there's more going on here. I like how we focus on these two characters in this episode. They're the everyday human people who eventually get caught up in all these crazy events. It is a scene full of exposition, but it feels like a genuine normal conversation as these two teachers chat.
I'm lending her a book on the French Revolution.
What's she going to do, rewrite it? Oh, all right.
William Russell and Jacqueline Hill have amazing natural chemistry, keeping things light-hearted and joking around with one another, whilst also building up that mystery of Susan, her grandfather, and their seemingly non-existent home in Totter's Lane. It's a brilliant way to build things up, especially because both characters have very different views on the situation, with Barbara concerned about how nothing adds up and speculating on all these possible reasons, while Ian is a lot more rational and just tries to find regular explanations for it all. Because of this, they're able to represent different aspects of the audience themselves and guide us through, since we're essentially watching the events through their eyes. It's then that we meet this mysterious Susan Foreman we've heard so much about, and I just find it funny how different things were in the 60s that it was deemed acceptable for teachers to offer their young students a ride home. Anyway, in something also kind of messed up, the teachers decide to stalk Susan home because they're curious, since nothing appears to make sense. I really like how we get flashbacks to Susan struggling in class because of that anachronistic knowledge, like mistakenly claiming the UK was already using the decimal system for money, something that wouldn't actually happen until 1971, which is actually kinda neat and prophetic and makes the episode age quite nicely. These flashbacks are a great way to add variety to this long scene of the teacher just casing out the junkyard. It's all well and good telling us about all these things Susan is doing and saying, or the impossible knowledge she seems to have, but showing us actual examples of it really helps to illustrate to the audience how, well, unearthly she really is. By the time Susan enters the junkyard, we have a great idea of who she is and how and why she doesn't fit in, meaning we're just as confused and curious as Ian and Barbara themselves. It keeps drawing us in and getting us more and more gripped with all of these new things.
I feel frightened. As if we were about to interfere in something that is best left alone.
I love the music as Ian and Barbara enter the junkyard, further building up the tension and mystery of everything as they try to explore in the darkness to no avail. However, it's then that they discover the very out of place police box, which has no business standing in a junkyard like this. I feel like a lot of people nowadays might not understand just how common police boxes were at the time. These were multi-purpose call boxes allowing the general public to call the police, while also allowing members of the police to take breaks, do reports, and also temporarily hold detainees if need be. It wouldn't make sense for such a box to randomly be in a junkyard like this, which is what makes it so interesting and strange, especially when the teachers discover it seems to have a faint electronic vibration, humming as if it's alive. But before they can leave, we meet none other than the mysterious Doctor himself, and yes, that is his official character name as per the credits. I really like Hartnell as the Doctor. He perfectly balances grumpiness and abrasiveness with a real sense of wit and charm.
Is it reasonable to suppose that anybody would be inside a cupboard like that?
He has a sense of smug superiority, but it doesn't really seem arrogant or villainous. It's more like he's toying and playing with these two humans and enjoying their confusion as they try to work out what the box is and how it opens. I also love how they're all like, let us in or we'll get the police, and the Doctor is just like, I bet. When coming up with the idea of Doctor Who, Sidney Newman was very excited about the titular character, who was meant to be a grumpy old man with a twinkle in his eye, an authority figure children could understand and respect. Originally, producer Rex Tucker wanted actor Hugh David as the Doctor, but he was rightfully shot down for being too young at just 37 years old. There were a few other suggestions, but I think William Hartnell was absolutely perfect for the role. It was a very different character for Hartnell to play, but you wouldn't know it because of how naturally he slips into the role of the Doctor. He has the authority and grumpiness Newman wanted, but he also has that sense of cheekiness that makes him very likeable, especially with his iconic chuckle. However, the Doctor's demeanour in the scene changes the moment Ian and Barbara force their way into the TARDIS, giving us that glimpse of his more furious and petulant angry side, berating the teachers for meddling and barging inside his and Susan's home. I mean, they kind of broke in.
You don't deserve any explanations. You pushed your way in here uninvited and unwelcome.
I like that there's a bit of a sharp edge to the first Doctor, especially in retrospect. He's a lot younger and hasn't spent nearly as much time around humans, so he almost looks down on them and mocks them for their comparative lack of intelligence and understanding of the universe. It's like he views the teachers as cavemen for not understanding the TARDIS, which obviously is kind of fitting considering the rest of the serial. And of course, I have to mention how beautiful the TARDIS itself is. The interior was created by Peter Brachy, a Polish production designer who would go on to work on Blake 7, and it just looks absolutely fantastic, with all these sleek surfaces and the brilliantly realised console itself, which is full of all these buttons with specific purposes. It may not be the flashiest or fanciest TARDIS console room by today's standards, but as the original, it's so imaginative and delightful to look at. And naturally, there's also the mind-breaking aspect of it being bigger on the inside.
It's an illusion, it must be. What is he talking about now?
This idea to squeeze a giant, seemingly infinite spaceship inside a tiny police box is such an incredible revolutionary concept, and it creates such an interesting selling point for the show, really making sure Doctor Who sets itself apart from other sci-fi media of the time. It's a truly exceptional reveal to end the episode on, Ian and Barbara refusing to believe it could ever be possible, but the Doctor doesn't trust them and he can't let them leave, so he dematerialises TARDIS with the teachers still on board. Yeah, the first companions were literally kidnapped and then later dropped off like 2 years after disappearing from the Earth because the Doctor couldn't actually pilot the TARDIS at this point. Kinda makes you realise how lucky modern companions are, they at least get a choice. I feel like An Unearthly Child is the perfect way to begin Doctor Who, this single episode really effectively introducing you to everything you need to know about the show, building this brilliant air of mystery and intrigue. But it wasn't always this way. There was actually an unaired pilot episode filmed, and it was so bad Sidney Newman ordered the whole thing to be filmed again from scratch. And the filming process back then wasn't exactly easy. They only had like 2 opportunities to cut because they essentially had to film it like a play. The pilot therefore is an absolute disaster. The narrative is pretty much the same, but there are so many botches and technical issues. Newman even claimed it was the worst piece of work he'd seen in a long time. You get all sorts of line flubs and actors knocking things over or bumping into things. It's all a bit embarrassing and amateurish, and therefore it's not at all surprising the whole thing was redone multiple times because it would have to have been broadcast with all these problems. There were also some issues with the characterizations, with the Doctor angrier and more confrontational without that twinkle, while Susan is more sexualized, which, yes, is kind of weird considering she's meant to come across as a 15-year-old. I think it's safe to say that if this original pilot had been aired, Doctor Who would have been completely dead on arrival. A significant roadblock the first episode faced was the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, which happened the night before An Unearthly Child aired, so a lot of people were too distracted by the news to watch the episode, with only 4.4 million people tuning in for the launch of this brand new, heavily promoted show. The episode was therefore repeated the following week before the Cave of Skulls, reaching 6 million viewers and massively improving the show's chances of success. And yes, since I am reviewing the whole 4-part story, I guess I have to at least touch upon the following 3 episodes. But they're really not good. I know everything was working against the production team, but it's just kind of a run-of-the-mill caveman story as a tribe tries to rediscover fire. Hey, at least the Doctor almost bashes someone's head in with a rock, I could have done without watching it. I just find these episodes so bland, treading water as the script tries desperately to adhere to Newman's strict mandate of Doctor Who exploring Earth's history in a very educational sense. The first episode was a brilliantly mysterious and atmospheric story building up intrigue, but the moment they land in the past, everything grinds to a halt and it's so painful to suffer through. And that's not just me being an impatient zoomer with no attention span, it was even received awfully at the time too, with those 3 Caveman episodes receiving very mixed reviews and even almost getting the entire show cancelled behind the scenes. Sure, the Caveman parts do have some redeeming aspects, seeing how these protagonists are forced to put aside their differences to survive and learn to trust one another to escape, but it really doesn't need to be as long as it is, and it could have definitely been improved extensively. Although, saying that, just get rid of the whole thing. I want to find out what that policeman was doing. I don't care about the police box, I just want the policeman, With how massive and successful Doctor Who has become over the last 60 years, it's almost easy to forget it had such troubled beginnings. From casting to scripting to filming and broadcasting, there were problems at literally every step of the way, and it's a surprise everything worked out so well. Of course, we wouldn't actually have Doctor Who today if it wasn't for the Daleks, but I think An Unearthly Child in isolation as a single episode is a brilliant introduction to Doctor Who. We start off with the normal human characters and then follow them as things get weirder and weirder, culminating in that reveal of the titular Doctor and the TARDIS. It's paced superbly with such a rich atmosphere and mood, helped by the black and white visuals of the time, enhancing that sense of mystery. All 4 characters are acted wonderfully, each providing a distinct sense of identity and personality to the wider story, with Hartnell the perfect choice for the first Doctor, instantly winning you over with his charm and a twinkle in his eye, even as he lets his temper flare at times. Carol Ann Ford lends so much alien intrigue to Susan, this young girl who doesn't fit in, and then Ian and Barbara are stand-ins for the audience themselves, these regular people thrown into such a crazy world. Despite all the adversity, it shines as a labour of love, with things like the TARDIS immediately setting Doctor Who apart from other shows and movies of the time, so it's definitely worth checking out just to see how it all began. Just maybe skip the caveman politics. Also, speaking of cavemen, just as a little bit of a message to Steph Coburn, the son of the writer, who has taken it upon himself to withdraw licensing rights to the entire story because he doesn't like the modern show cast in Ncuti Gatwa and Jinx Monsoon. Hi Steph. Doctor Who was created by a Canadian, produced by a Jewish woman, directed by a gay Indian man, and the TARDIS was designed by a Polish immigrant, right? It's always been woke. Get over it. Anyway, with all that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time where I might look into some more classic Who. Bye bye. And I'd just like to thank my Asbantium level patrons, Fallon Cortez and Nathan Gibson, my Diamond level patron Glenna Clark, my Platinum level patrons Maximilian Foreman and Nix Games, and all my Gold level patrons Boots, Daniel Shillito, Franzorn aka Line Vortex, Robert Hock, and Tom Azar. Thank you so much for your support.